Oh God, I don't want to do this. I'm already angry. I'm already angry. Oh God, no, I'm gonna do a rant video, so I'm gonna try and not go thermonuclear right now. But
Not on this one. Save that for
I'm,
the rant.
I'm already, I
That
can,
will go viral and make us famous.
I know, I can already feel my blood pressure rising. Right, okay. Oh God. So
Take your
the headline here, which came out the other day, was essentially the Labour Party was doing a report that got leaked, and the leak revealed that Labour plans to focus on the flag and patriotism to win back voters. Now, based purely on that headline alone, it doesn't give you a huge amount of hope, does it?
Not at all. Not at all. And I think what's so funny about this leak is it's something that we kind of had previously been joking about. Like, oh yeah, they want to just wave a couple Union Jacks about and like connect with the Red Wall or whatever. It was kind of like, no, there's no way they're actually doing this. So it's like, what you're saying we were right all along?
Yeah, the thing we were
It-
joking about, where we're like, oh, well, they're just going to try and be like Tories light, and we were like, nah, that's ridiculous, but it's funny. And
It's
it's
like,
like,
oh
no,
no,
that's
that's
exactly what
actually
they're
their
doing.
strategy. Actually, what in black and white, what they've been trying to do. It's
Oh,
just, and it just makes you think like, is this an electoral strategy that will? Is this a winning electoral strategy? I don't know if trying to rest on. I mean, it was something that New Labour did quite a lot. Kind of, because they were a bit they went along with the right wing kind of talking points where I was like, yeah, no,
yeah,
to
yeah.
talk about immigration and stuff, we need to address these kind of things from the right. And so it's,
Mm,
are they trying to emulate, instead of being an opposition, are they just trying to be a chameleon of the Tories? And it's like, is that
yeah.
totally winning? Is that a winning strategy? I don't know if it is.
Well, it worked for New Labour, like you say. The thing that I mean, I was young during that period. I was in my childhood, so I don't remember a lot. But looking back, the thing that really stuck out to me was the smart stuff they did, like the sort of slogan, "Tough on crime, tough on the causes of crime." That's clever because it appeals to the lock them up, throw them
Yeah,
away, all that
don't
sort of
wear the
stuff.
key.
But then the tough on the causes of crime is a much more progressive, left leaning
Mm.
statement where you're saying, actually, we understand that these people need to be punished, but we're also going to look at the causes of why crime happens and address those societal causes. And that's just that statement there shows a level of vision where they completely understood who they were pitching to. They're
Mm.
pitching to you need a broad coalition of
Coalition,
people,
yeah.
but you can't sell out on your values. They're the Labour Party. They want to be tough on the causes of crime, but they understand that they can't be bleeding heart lefties letting people get away with crime and all that sort of stuff. So that's why that slogan's so clever. Tough on crime, perfect, but tough on the causes of crime, very clever. And I'm not sure that kind of vision exists in the Labour Party anymore. I don't think they understand why New Labour was successful. And I think there's a lot of things you can criticise New Labour for, the Iraq War, all sorts of other stuff. But in terms of what their objectives were and how they went about achieving them and their understanding of the electorate,
Mm.
they completely got that, and they completely understood how to pitch stuff so to bring on people but also not lose their base. And I'm not convinced Labour or Keir Starmer have the vision or intelligence to do that.
I think that's a really interesting point that you bring up, that New Labour, whether consciously or unconsciously, was able to kind of dress up kind of more left leaning policies, but with kind of, let's say, the makeup of right wing
Yeah,
talking points in order to push it through the electorate. I think that's really interesting.
yeah,
Whereas kind of what this Labour strategy is, it's all cosmetic. It's all
yeah,
just we wave a few flags. It isn't actually substantive.
yeah.
The same. So there is nothing to dress up and sell to the
No,
vote.
exactly.
It's just the optics of it. I
They're
think
just
that's a really interesting point. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think the crucial differentiation, like you said, is New Labour had beliefs and policies which they then put a wig on to disguise for the
Mm.
people they had to bring on board. Whereas essentially what Labour now is doing is wearing a Boris Johnson bodysuit and
Yeah.
saying, yeah, look at us. And that's a completely different
Mm.
approach. And
Yeah.
if you take off the bodysuit, I'm not convinced Labour really has any policies right now. That's where you get your success electorally. You can't do a Jeremy Corbyn where we're going to be hyper specific and appeal to this group of people and fuck everyone else because they're not ideologically pure enough. That you don't win elections like that, and that's been proven. So we'll see. But anyway, there's some interesting quotes then that come out of this. So the first one is, and this is, Labour must use the union flag, veterans, and dressing smartly as part of a radical rebranding to help win back disillusioned voters.
Dressing smartly.
And using veterans. Fucking hell, guys. What are we doing? What are you doing?
This does. I don't know what to make of this because it is the ultimate kind of stereotype of what we kind of were joking about, but they're actually doing this shit, and it is so surface level, so kind of shallow, so cliche. But this is actually leaked, focus group policy, what they're actually doing. But then I guess the dressing smartly thing was something that they absolutely crucified Corbyn on. Whenever he turned up and didn't wear a tie, it'd be fun. So I kind of see, don't give them the ammunition to. But then the using of veterans in the media, it just seems a bit cliche and hunting and going after a part of the electorate which doesn't really even exist. It's kind of a mythical electorate that is created by the tabloid papers and things like that, where I don't think people. I mean, maybe I'm totally wrong and I'm just living in a bubble, but is the Union Jack really the difference maker here?
No, I think you're right. And the problem with this is the Conservatives are much better at flag shagging.
Yeah.
And they're much better at idealising and worshipping World War II specifically. That's the one they live in the past on. You ask Mark Francois about World War II and he creams in his little pants the moment anyone says the word. So they're not going to win on this. If you're looking to appeal to that type of person, why are they going to vote for you and not the Conservatives? What are you offering where they go, oh yeah, all right, I'll vote for you guys? Because chances are they're going to say, well, actually, I'll just stick with the Conservatives. Thank you very much, because they do this and more, of what I like. Whereas you guys are dangerous socialists pretending to be all patriotic. So it doesn't come off as authentic because it's not.
No.
You can be patriotic.
That's the thing.
And the thing that I always find is patriotism isn't loving your country. It's loving the people in your country. And that's where the left succeeds, because it appeals to the people in the country. Whereas if you look at right-wing propaganda, it's all about the country, the flag. It's not about
the empire.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a massive window of opportunity here. And that's why the SNP has been so successful in Scotland, because it's not about the land. It's not about the flag. Scottish patriotism is about the Scottish people. And if you live in Scotland, you're Scottish. So you're part of that shared history and identity. And that's why you look at the Labour and the Conservatives, how they look at Scotland and the indie movement right now, and they don't understand it. They honestly don't understand, it's a horrible nationalistic movement. Well, no, it's not. You guys have a completely different understanding of patriotism and nationalism to what's going on in Scotland. And so it's fascinating. It's like they're feeling through the dark, and they're like, well, the Conservatives are really good at patriotism, so maybe we should try that. But there's a massive gap in England specifically for, like I say, this sort of, I guess you call it positive patriotism, to say, no, patriotism is not just about a fucking flag and saying how great we were in World War II. Yeah. It's about the people in this country and our communities. And I think they could go down that route and be very successful.
And another thing about this, which I think we kind of already said it, but it just seems like they've kind of picked up the most cliche things that were kind of used by the Conservatives and against Labour, but like it's just the most kind of cliche and slightly like cringe parts of like, no, this is what we need now. And it just
they're not wrong.
I think you're absolutely right about it. Doesn't seem really genuine. It seems kind of surface level and forced. I think you said forced, yeah. And it totally does. It totally does. It's just, and then you lose both sides, because one side thinks it's forced, and the other side thinks, why are you doing this?
And the next quote obviously sort of speaks to that, because it says it reveals that voters could not describe who or what Labour stands for. And
Mm.
that's exactly the point. By doing this, you're not really helping, because
Mm.
everyone really knows deep down that's not what Labour stands for.
Yeah.
Labour's never been a let's go shag a flag and hero worship some World War II veterans.
Mm.
Obviously, there is an element of that, but
Mm.
Labour's always been patriotic in a slightly different way. Like I've just said, this sort of community patriotism.
Yeah.
And it's if they're scared of being inauthentic, this doesn't help, because this is so obviously not something they would do.
Mm.
It seems so blinkered to me. It's like, oh, we've got this idea of this voter in our head, identities,
Mm.
inauthentically, to
Yeah.
win these people over and probably alienate a certain amount of our base.
It will alienate them by kind of making them feel like these aren't really our kind of values. You're going in a direction which is so much more attributed to like right wing talking points, right wing
Yeah,
parties. And it's not to say that, oh, most of the Labour supporters, don't like, what is it, the Union Jack,
yeah,
veteran
yeah.
dressing smartly. But it does seem just like a focused change, which people will feel a bit alienated by,
Yeah.
just a little bit.
But
Not, you know.
and I think the thing is, it feels like you're ceding the ground. You're ceding the ground to the Conservatives and
Yeah,
accepting how they frame the argument. You're
yeah,
not actually bringing an opposing argument. You're saying, yeah, all right, the way you frame it, we
yeah.
give up. That's now how we frame all debate, and it just feels like they're giving up. And
I
it's
think,
like, well,
yeah, that's a much better way of saying what I think I was trying to say. Yeah, that is 100.
no, well, no, I
That's
completely get what you're
100%.
saying.
Yeah,
But that's when I read this, I was like, oh, so they've given up actually trying to make a case themselves. They've ceded the ground, and now they're saying we're going to make the same case, but we're Labour, so that makes us better. Which
yeah,
I don't necessarily know is a winning argument. Really
exactly.
interestingly, Clive Lewis, who's a Labour MP, who I quite rate.
For Norwich, not one of the Norwich constituents, Norwich South or something like that, I believe he is. Really,
Yeah,
really interesting
yeah.
chap.
I quite rate him. I was disappointed when he didn't make it very far in the leadership runoff,
Leadership.
because he was involved there. I was disappointed, but he makes a really good point here, where it's, the Tory party has absorbed UKIP, and
Mm.
now the Labour Party appears to be absorbing the language and symbols of the Tory party, which is just what I was saying a minute ago. They've ceded the ground. They've accepted the field that we're now going to fight on.
Mm.
They're not bringing a counter narrative. They're not saying, no, we're not going to fight the battle here. They've said, yeah, okay, we'll take your language and your symbols. We'll accept this is what patriotism is. This is what loving your country means. This
Mm.
is what caring about the UK means.
Mm.
We're not going to create our own narrative. We're going to accept yours. And that's and Clive Lewis is saying the same thing. And I think he's completely right. And full disclaimer, I'm not going to vote Labour. I live in Scotland. I've got other options. I don't need to vote Labour. Were I in England last year when he was elected, I would have considered it. Over the last year, I would struggle quite a lot to vote Labour right
Yeah.
now. And in a first past the post system, that's obviously difficult, because usually it's only Conservative and Labour that matter. But
And then
I don't
the thing
know.
arises where it's like, in first past the post, it's bad. But then if you're voting for the alternative and the alternative isn't an alternative, fundamentally, substantively, policy wise,
Mm.
well, then you might as well not vote,
Yeah, exactly.
You might as well not vote if voting for the non-Tories just gives you the same thing. And I think, and also an interesting dynamic in this is, under New Labour, the Rupert Murdoch media, the press were very much, what was his name, Alistair Campbell, as the communications director.
Yeah, they were able to foster a dynamic with the media. Some saw
Yeah,
that as selling out to them, which I think there's an argument to make there. But they were able to get them on board
I think
in
there's
a way.
definitely argue
Yeah.
to make that values of the Labour Party did get compromised to a
Mm.
certain extent. But also think about how adversarial since New Labour the tabloid papers have been.
Yeah.
Because
To Labour.
don't forget, the Sun and papers like that were pro
Labour.
Tony Blair
Yeah.
early on. And I just think I really think it can't be stressed enough how how a press which is only adversarial to Labour, they're basically the mouthpieces to Boris Johnson and
Yeah.
in his ilk. I really think that unless I think that's why I think it's important to build a kind of new media, left wing
Yeah.
media, because because you're losing the kind of reservoirs of information that average people pick up on. You know, we
Yeah.
need left, independent, daily papers, weeklies,
No,
things,
exactly.
because they,
And I'll
'cause
stop you there
otherwise
because
you
we're going to
lose.
talk about media later in
Oh,
our
sorry,
next
sorry.
topic. So this is all great stuff, but I want to talk about it in a bit. But you're right, in a right wing and a rabidly right wing media landscape, you're completely right. It's
Yeah.
very difficult to make headway. Speaking of media, interestingly, a great cartoon here. So what Keir Starmer speaks to the media, he says here, "What makes you think I'm a posh Londoner? When I were young, we'd eat coal for breakfast." And he's got obviously a ferret down his trousers and a pint of beer and a whippet and all this sort of stuff, which
Fucking
is
roll up
obviously,
cigarette.
yeah, exactly, which is obviously a ridiculous caricature. But I am slightly worried
Mm,
that both the cons think this is what the North is.
mm.
I'm
Yeah.
slightly worried.
It makes you think kind of how there are these stereotypes which exist, and we still look at the North as like, yeah, the manufacturing kind of minor heartlands and all that.
Mm.
You know, not uneducated, but well, I mean, the stereotype kind of is that
Yeah,
you
well, it
know,
is. Yeah, no.
these poor Northerners, and when you think that we have the biggest divide regionally between, you know, wealthy and I mean, worse than Italy. And you know how we talk about the
Yeah.
Italians, oh, the North and the South being all lazy. We have the same thing with the North, and I think we risk, you know, by, like we said in earlier slides, kind of Union Jack, dress smart, pro soldiers, as if, you know, the
As
North
if,
was
yeah,
did demonstrate against the Iraq War and things like that. You
yeah.
know,
No,
we
exactly.
risk patronizing them, and then when
Hey,
people feel that they're talked down to, and, you know, ooh, baby fed things, there is a pushback to that because people don't like being talked to like children. So I think,
no,
yeah, I
exactly.
agree with what you
And I
said.
think, I think the danger is that Westminster politicians, they view the North two dimensionally. We know they view Scotland two dimensionally, but I think they view the North two dimensionally as well. And I
Yeah.
think Labour's missing a massive opportunity here because the North is struggling. I've
Mm,
lived in the North. I lived in Lancaster, parts of Yorkshire. I also lived in Wales for a while. I had the opportunity to
mm,
see these places. These are ex-industrial
mm,
parts of the country or parts of the UK
mm.
that are struggling. The people are suffering because affluent livelihoods where, yeah, it may have been quite hard work, a lot of it, but you could make a good living.
Yeah,
And
high paying manufacturing and
yeah,
mining jobs just,
disappeared.
and these
And
people aren't stupid. These people aren't,
no,
these
they're not
communities
stupid.
remember, you know.
Well, exactly. We've got a lot of good universities in the North and in Wales as well. This is an educated
Mm.
part of the world. And it's like they're all looked as like coal miners.
Sympathies.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And it's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
if you came to them and said, no, we've neglected you, we understand that all the investment's gone to London and the southeast and south, well, not even the southwest, Cornwall gets and Devon gets ignored as well.
Yeah,
But
literally just Kent and
just
London.
Kent and London essentially.
Mm,
But if you came to them and said, we understand, you've been given a raw deal, we're going to change that. We're actually going to meet, because there's always like, oh, we'll build a railway up to Leeds.
mm,
That will somehow solve the
yeah.
problem. No, you have to invest in these towns, in these communities. If there's no infrastructure to do anything there, if the bus service doesn't work, if there's no jobs, if there's nothing,
Mm,
nothing's ever going to improve. And if you just keep treating them as a stereotype,
mm,
and just go and say, oh well, we love the Union Jack, we love veterans. Yeah, that might appeal to a certain group,
mm,
but the rest of them are begging.
mm,
They were so desperate they voted for Boris fucking Johnson. That's how desperate these people were,
mm,
because Labour has not given them the fucking time of day recently.
mm.
If they had a better option, I have no
They
doubt
take,
they would vote for a better option. They would not vote for fucking Boris Johnson.
and I think, you know, totally agree. I think Boris Johnson, in a way, did tap into this with this whole, we're going to level up the economy,
Yeah,
we're going to give back, and then boom, look, they voted for the Tories for the first time. You know,
yeah,
the red, you know, places like Bury, Redcar,
yeah.
um, what was Tony Blair's former constituent, Sedgefield, uh,
Wrexham in Wales.
Wrexham,
Yeah.
Anglesey, you know, one of those whatever.
Bly Valley, I think.
He did this to exactly the things that you were saying. But look, we're going to listen
Yeah,
to, we're going to level up the
yeah,
economy. Whether or
yeah.
not, of course, he didn't mean it, but
No,
he tapped into exactly what you're saying. Yeah.
no, exactly. I think you're right, and I think what's going to happen is that Boris Johnson is going to Donald Trump
Mm.
the North, just like Donald Trump Donald Trumped America and the working class in America by saying, "Yeah, I'm your man," and he did nothing for them for
And
4
then
years.
just turned out to be an elitist
Yeah,
oligarch, just like
exactly. That's going to happen with Boris Johnson as well. He's promised all these things. He doesn't give a shit.
mm,
He doesn't even give a shit about his own kids or the ex-wives he's got. Like, why do you think he gives a shit about the North? Like, he
yeah.
just said those things to get elected, but people were so desperate they wanted to believe. I
And
think it.
I think it's important to also say, as much as the red wall has been gone, by pandering to this stereotype of the North, those red wall seats, once they realise that Boris Johnson is just going to leave them behind and things, I don't think it's going to take a Herculean task to necessarily get them back on
Mm,
side. Necessarily, I don't think by pandering to them in this way, it necessarily helps.
no,
Offer them something substantive. Show them. I mean, I think Boris Johnson will demonstrate by himself well enough that I mean, it was leveling up bollocks. That's not happening.
no.
And I think these voters will come. It's not crazy that these voters will come back.
So just jumping back to this whole sort of the left or
Mm,
Labour rather seeming to cede the field. This is an excellent political cartoon. It's obviously in German, so I'll translate for the audience. Uh, but essentially, it's the title is Das Conservative Spiel, which is basically
the
the
Conservative
conservative
team.
play, the
Yeah,
conservative act. This is
yeah.
what the conservatives do. So the first up top, you've got Lass uns in die Mitte treffen, which is let us meet in the middle. So the
Mm,
guy on the left, he walks over to the middle, and then the guy on the right works further to the right.
mm,
And then the bottom panel is Lass uns in der Mitte treffen. So let's meet in the middle again. So you see the Overton window just keeps fucking moving.
mm,
And you've seen that in the Republican Party and the Democratic Party in America, where the Republican Party's moved right. And
mhm,
instead of actually saying, well, we've got an alternative, the Democrats just keep tacking right.
mm,
And my concern is that this is exactly what's happening in the UK now, where Keir Starmer thinks, well, the Democrats managed to just cling on to power or win power. Clearly, this works. So
mm,
let's tack right, and let's move that debate from left right to
mm.
right center or right and more right. Yeah, it worries me that that's what's going to happen, and I think this is such a simple cartoon, but such a powerful cartoon because it shows you exactly what's happening, and
Mm.
it doesn't seem like the left is
There's no,
able to counter it.
I think this is absolutely correct, and I'm reading a book, kind of a selected writings by Rosa Luxemburg at the moment, and she kind of talks about something similar to this when in one of her essays arguing for kind of in the early 20th century. Of course, she was in the SDP.
In Germany.
Yeah, in arguing for the 8-hour working day,
Mm,
and she said for the left to be victorious, you have to be uncompromising in your values, and then by creating an argument and not giving ground, you will make the opposition come to you.
yeah,
Her argument was like, we're not going to say, we're not going to fight for an 8-hour day and then settle for a 10-hour day. We're
yeah,
going to fight for an 8-hour day, then the opposition will come, and by us being so ferocious and standing up for our values, will come and give us the 10-hour day. But we're not going to admit that they might be right, and give up and turn our backs on our values. We're not going to meet them in the middle.
yeah,
In them in the middle, then legitimizes their arguments, and I think
yeah,
this is exactly this is comparable to that.
yeah,
By meeting them in the middle, you're giving grounds to their arguments, which are demonstrably wrong, and then
yeah,
inch by inch, it's like, no, this is the line where we're not going to move past. You put a toe over that line then moves,
yeah,
and then
exactly,
find ourselves in a kind of in a wormhole or in a spiral of giving ground. But
exactly.
really, we need to be uncompromising in our values and our goals. And then by putting out these arguments, that's why I think a strong independent left wing media is important, to kind of put this information out there. By being uncompromising in these positions,
Mm,
the opposition will give us ground, which then we can work with. Think about the stimulus bill in America right now.
mm,
think about how they've watered down that bill so much. You know,
Yeah,
$2,000 checks to 1,400 because look, we need some Republicans to get on board. Blah 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 blah. They've watered down this bill. Not a single Republican voted for it, and
yeah.
it's pushed through with
Kamala
reconciliation.
Harris. Yeah,
You might have well kept the $2,000 checks because not a
yeah. You
Republican
may
was
as
going to
well.
vote.
Yeah.
You've given up all this ground,
For no
and
reason.
none of them voted for it anyway. So
No.
why don't you stick to your values, stick to your promises,
Yeah.
and then why water stuff down when they are never going to be on your side. And I
No,
think
that's
this
such
just
a good
plays out
example.
time and time again. But anyway, back to you.
That's such a good example because the Democrats lost whilst winning,
Mm,
and the Republicans were in a position where they kind of got what they want, which was less big
mm.
checks, and didn't have to vote for it.
Didn't even support it, and you've
It's
given up all this ground and political
Yeah,
capital and
exactly,
lied
and
to Georgia voters. I mean, like,
exactly, and the Democrats now want to try and pull this off as some kind of win. And this is the thing: the right wing is so much better, like you were
yeah,
saying with
they're
this
organized,
paper.
they're disciplined.
They stick to what they believe in, and
Mm,
fuck you. And the left then suddenly feels the need to be like, oh well, we have to meet them halfway because we have to be bipartisan. Well, they've got no interest in being
yeah.
bipartisan, so you're gonna lose if you go down that direction because they're gonna get most of what they want, or at least some of what they want, and
Mm.
you're gonna have to compromise on your values, like you
And then
said.
you're gonna compromise, and they're gonna blame it all on you
Yeah,
if
exactly.
because if the stimulus bill doesn't actually help people to the extent, well, it's your fault for doing a crap stimulus bill. None of
Well,
us voted for it.
it's mind-boggling. It is mind-boggling. So yeah, no, there's this next picture which I quite like, which is Keir Starmer, and it's been memed to death. But in my mind, that's him considering moving right, and he's like, yes,
That's
yes,
it's strong with him.
exactly. Oh, stick that Union Jack right up my rectum. Oh, it's so good. And yeah,
Him thinking,
I look so good on TV. My hair looks amazing. Why is Keir Starmer doing this? What is this tack to the right to whatever it is, loving Union Jacks and veterans and dressing smartly? Why is he doing this? If we look at the polls, he's obviously made ground since he's become leader. Obviously, the 2019 election was disastrous for Labour. I think it was the worst defeat since the 1930s.
in vote share, it wasn't that bad, but in seats, it was the
It was
worst since
awful.
like the Second
Yeah.
World War or something.
Which is crazy because our first past the post system distorts everything. It's not fucking democracy. But anyway, that's a
Yeah.
different conversation. But as you can see, since he's come into power, he's closed the gap, and you could call it neck and neck, but they can't get over the hump.
Mm,
There seems to be this hard limit where
mm,
they just can't gain ground. And you can see they're now
mm.
desperately casting around to try and say, how do we actually get ahead? Because
How
this
do
is
we
a
get off
government.
the edge?
This is a government that's killed 100,000 people. And if you look at here, I've picked some couple of polls from Twitter that were posted there. I follow Britain Elects, which is it's a really good Twitter site where it shares all the polls that are being
Mm,
posted in the UK. But you can see this is post 100,000 deaths,
mm,
and either Conservatives are holding a lead or are building on the lead fractionally, but they are doing it, or they've gained it back from Labour. Labour may have ahead. So they're on the cusp, and you can see he's casting around, thinking, "How do I get over the
yeah.
hump? How do I build a consistent lead against the Conservatives?" And he obviously needs to bring on some of those voters who are voting Conservative, because I don't think you're getting any more voters from the Lib Dems or the Greens or the SNP. That's
Mm,
pretty, they're in the single digits. Obviously, SNP is slightly different, but Green and Lib Dems are UK wide parties, and they're
mm,
holding about 5 to 6% of the vote, respectively.
mm.
Um, so he's got to go after Conservative voters or ex-Labour voters who are now voting Conservative. So you can see why he's taking this strategy,
Mm.
but I don't think it's the right strategy, because the danger is he then sheds voters to the Greens or the Lib Dems or the
Yeah.
SNP. So I'm not sure this is the play. I think there's another way to do this,
Mm.
and I'm not a political advisor, but if I was an advisor of Keir Starmer, I'd say I'm not sure this is the play. It
Mhm.
seems like the play, and if you look at the polls, it feels like it's the play, but I'm not convinced it is.
And I think an important point to make is we cannot brush under the carpet how bad Labour's loss to the Conservatives in December 2019 was, but
Yeah,
also we cannot ignore that from the May 2017 election, was the hung parliament, to January, it was like to early 2019, Labour was either in the lead in the polls and was never in that entire almost, no, 2 year span, was never more than 3 percentage points away from the Conservatives, which is crazy. Because then in 2019, of course, the anti-Semitism stuff, the media kind of smears, ramped up, the confusion of the Brexit position, and all these factors then made them collapse. But we can't also forget that for 2 years, despite everything, Labour was right here. This is like we've gone to 2017, 2018.
This is where they were, exactly.
So as much as we're like, Keir Starmer's brought things closer, Jeremy Corbyn did. I mean, admittedly, lost a horrendous election, but for substantive amounts of time, this is exactly like 2018, 2017.
Yeah.
So is it improvement? I don't know. Is it? I mean, apart from 2019, this is just a copy and paste of the 2 years previous.
Exactly. So, and if the best Keir Starmer can do now is lose a close election, that's not why he was elected leader.
Well, why don't we just bring Jeremy Corbyn back then?
Yeah, exactly. You're not changing anything. So Keir Starmer has to have some vision here, and I'm not sure he's got the vision.
And
I don't think he's got the vision.
Jeremy Corbyn had opinions on things.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
If we're going to poll exactly the same, okay, I get the 2019 election was a disaster, but there are other factors there.
Yeah.
If we're going to poll consistently the same, what's the difference?
What's the point?
It's like we're right after the 2017 election again. Yeah. It's like we're here, 38 to 40, 39 to 41. We're right back there,
And the thing is, the Conservative Party has never been more for the taking. They're destroying the country with a Brexit they don't even understand.
Yeah, no.
They are literally killing the population through incompetence and corruption. They're on the floor begging to be finished off, and Labour cannot find a way to do it. And I do not understand how that is possible.
No, definitely. And this is exactly the sort of situation which, in the Jeremy Corbyn years, centrists would be saying, if someone else was in charge, we'd be 20 points ahead. Exactly times like this. When, think about the what is it, the 2016 Conservative leadership election right after the Brexit vote, when the Conservatives were in disarray. We should be ahead. Oh, but then Labour kicks them, kneecaps themselves by having a leadership election of their own.
Yeah.
This is exactly a time when centrists used to be like, we should be taking advantage of this. We should be ahead of the polls. This is your chance, lads. This is your chance. Yeah. Oh wait, it might be a bit more difficult than you guys have said.
It's not easy. I don't want to minimise the task that Keir Starmer has. It's not easy, and it's going to be difficult. But come on, man, you have to start holding the government to account properly. A, but B, create an alternative vision for the country, because you're not doing it on everything. You're just saying, well, we're the we're not really the Conservatives, but we kind of are. And that's not going to do it, because those voters are not going to go away and say, oh yeah, I really like what he said, I'm going to vote for him now, because he's basically saying what the Tories are. It's not going to work. It's not going to work. And it frustrates me, because I am left of the left. I support the left. I want to see Labour do well, because they have to do well, because the alternative is not good as far as I'm concerned. And
exactly. The alternative isn't good, so stop trying to be the alternative. Stop trying to copy that alternative. Exactly. Be actually alternative.
I'm not particularly confident right now, but the election's a long way away, so we'll see what happens.